The story of Jesus Christ, the man who taught the world to love. Introduction. Hello, my dear learner. I want to begin today with a simple but powerful question. Have you ever felt completely alone in a crowd of people? Have you ever felt judged, not for what you did, but for who you are? Have you ever been told by the world around you that you are not good enough, not clean enough, not worthy enough to belong? Have you ever sat with a pain so deep that no human word seemed capable of reaching it, and wished that someone, just one person, would sit beside you without judgment, without condition, without asking you to be anything other than exactly what you are? Almost every human being alive has felt at least one of these things. And today, I am going to tell you the story of a man who spent his entire life, every single day of his public ministry, walking directly toward people who felt exactly that way. The rejected, the broken, the outcast, the sinner, the sick, the forgotten. The people that respectable society had decided were not worth their time. He did not walk toward them with pity. He walked toward them with love. Complete, unconditional, asking nothing in return love. His name is Jesus Christ. He is considered by over 2 billion Christians around the world to be the Son of God, the Savior of humanity. But today, I want to share his story as a human story. A story of a man who walked this earth, felt hunger and exhaustion and grief and loneliness, and who left behind a way of living so radical, so beautiful, so completely counter to everything the world told people to value, that 2,000 years later, his words still have the power to stop a heart and change a life. This story is for you, wherever you are, whatever you believe, whatever you have been through. Let us begin. Part 1. A humble beginning in an unlikely place. Jesus was born approximately 2,000 years ago in a small town called Bethlehem, in what is today the region of Palestine in the Middle East. His birth was not in a palace, not in a hospital, not even in a comfortable home. His mother, Mary, a young woman of deep faith and extraordinary inner strength, gave birth in a stable, surrounded by animals, in the cold, far from home, with nothing around her that the world would consider significant or worthy of remembrance. His earthly father, Joseph, was a carpenter, a working man, a man of quiet dignity who worked with his hands and provided for his family with honesty and care. Jesus grew up in a small village called Nazareth, so unremarkable that when people later heard where he was from, some of them actually said, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" And this is the first and perhaps most important thing that Jesus' story teaches us. God did not choose a palace. He did not choose a powerful city or a wealthy family or a position of social privilege. He chose a stable. He chose a carpenter's family. He chose the most ordinary, overlooked, underestimated beginning imaginable. Because the message of his entire life was going to be, from the very first breath, that the measure of a person has nothing to do with where they come from, what they own, or what position they hold in the world's eyes. The measure of a person is the love they carry and the love they give. The lesson of part 1. Do not measure your worth by your beginning. The most extraordinary stories in human history have started in the most ordinary places. Part 2. The Teacher. Words that changed the world. When Jesus was approximately 30 years old, he began his public ministry, and from the very first moment, what he said and how he said it was unlike anything what people had heard before. He did not teach in temples to carefully selected audiences of scholars and priests. He taught on hillsides, beside lakes, in marketplaces and fishing boats and ordinary homes. He taught wherever people were, because his message was for all people, not just the educated and the privileged. And the things he taught were completely, radically upside down from everything the world told people to value. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." In a world that celebrated power and wealth, he said the humble are blessed. He said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." In a world of rigid justice and harsh punishment, he said, "Lead with compassion." He said, "Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Pray for those who mistreat you." In a world built on the logic of revenge and retaliation, he said, "Choose love anyway. Choose it especially for the people who have hurt you." He said, "Do to others what you would have them do to you." So simple, so complete. A single sentence that contains the entire foundation of how human beings could live together in peace if they truly chose to practice it. People listened because his words were not theories. They were not philosophical abstractions delivered from a comfortable distance. They came from someone who was living every word he spoke in every moment, without exception. The lesson of part 2. The most powerful teaching is not what you say. It is the unity of what you say and how you live. Words spoken from a lived life land differently than words spoken from a lectern. Part 3. The Healer. Who he walked toward. If you want to understand Jesus, do not look first at what he said. Look at who he walked toward. He walked toward lepers, people with a skin disease so feared in that society that they were required by law to stand at a distance from others and call out, "Unclean, unclean," so that respectable people could avoid them. Jesus did not avoid them. He walked to them. He reached out and touched them. In a world that had decided these people were untouchable, he touched them. Not with pity, with dignity. With the simple, revolutionary act of treating a human being as a human being. He walked toward women, who in that society had almost no public standing or legal rights, and spoke to them directly, respectfully, as full human beings whose thoughts and faith and questions mattered completely. He walked toward tax collectors, despised by their own community as collaborators with the occupying Roman power, and sat at their tables and ate their food and called them by name. One of them, Zacchaeus, a man so universally disliked that he had climbed a tree just to see Jesus from a safe distance, found Jesus stopping beneath his tree, looking up and saying, "Come down. I am coming to your house today." Nobody had come to Zacchaeus' house in a long time. Nobody had wanted to. Jesus came, and Zacchaeus, moved by being seen by someone who had every reason not to see him, changed his entire life that afternoon. He walked toward a woman who had been caught in a serious moral failure, brought by a crowd of men ready to punish her. And instead of joining the condemnation, he quietly said, "Let the one among you who has never done wrong throw the first stone." One by one, every person in that crowd walked away. And Jesus turned to the woman and said, "I do not condemn you. Go and start a new life." The lesson of part 3. The people the world has given up on are often the ones most ready to be transformed by genuine love. Never decide that someone is beyond care. Never decide that someone does not deserve your kindness. Jesus never made that calculation, not once in his entire ministry. Part 4. The Cross. Love taken to its ultimate limit. The religious and political authorities of Jerusalem felt deeply threatened by Jesus. His message of equality, of compassion for the marginalized, of love over law, of inner transformation over outward religious performance, challenged the power structures that kept them in control. His growing following among ordinary people made him dangerous in their eyes. He was arrested, put on trial in a process that was deeply unjust, sentenced to death by crucifixion, one of the most painful and humiliating forms of execution used by the Roman Empire, reserved for the worst criminals and the most disposable human beings.
He was mocked. He was beaten. He was forced to carry the instrument of his own execution through the streets of Jerusalem while crowds jeered. And on the cross, in his final hours, he did not curse his torturers. He did not call for revenge. He looked at the people who had done this to him and said, "Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing." Forgiveness, at the moment of greatest suffering, for the people causing the suffering. Christians believe that through his death and resurrection, Jesus conquered sin and death and opened the path of salvation for all of humanity. That the cross was not the end, but the beginning of the greatest story ever told. The lesson of Part 4, love taken to its ultimate limit, does not look like weakness. It looks like the cross. Choosing others, completely, sacrificially, without reservation, even when it costs you everything, is not weakness. It is the most profound form of strength the world has ever witnessed.
Part 5. Jesus Today. Still the most influential life ever lived. Today, in 2026, over 2 billion people around the world follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. Christianity is the largest religion on earth. In every country, in every language, in communities rich and poor, powerful and marginalized, people are reading his words, gathering in his name, and finding in his life a model for how to love and how to live. But his influence reaches far beyond organized religion. Hospitals were built in his name because he healed the sick. Schools were built in his name because he valued every child. The concept of human dignity, that every person, regardless of their status, carries inherent worth, is inseparable from the revolution in values that Jesus began 2,000 years ago. Even people who do not share the Christian faith, scholars, historians, philosophers across every culture, recognize that the life of Jesus of Nazareth is the single most influential life in recorded human history. His teachings have shaped art, literature, law, ethics, and the very idea of what it means to be a civilized society. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He said, "Love one another as I have loved you." He said, "The greatest among you will be your servant."
In a world today that is more connected and more divided than ever, in a world of increasing selfishness, increasing isolation, increasing cruelty hidden behind screens, his words are not ancient history. They are the most urgent possible prescription for what ails us. The lesson of Part 5, a life lived in genuine, sacrificial, unconditional love for others, never ends. It echoes through time. It multiplies through the people it touches. It changes the world long after the person who lived it has gone. Because love, real love, is the only force in the universe that grows when you give it away. Ending. What you learned. My dear learner, what a profound and beautiful story we have shared together today. We sat in a cold stable in Bethlehem and watched the most important life in human history begin in the most ordinary circumstances imaginable. We stood on hillsides and beside lakes and heard words so radical and so true that they are still changing lives 2,000 years later. We walked beside a man who walked toward the rejected and the broken and the untouchable, and treated every single one of them as completely, infinitely worthy of love. We stood at the foot of a cross and heard, in the moment of greatest suffering, the most extraordinary prayer ever spoken. And we arrived here together, at a legacy so vast and so alive that over 2 billion people carry it in their hearts today, and that the world itself has been permanently shaped by it.
Let me leave these lessons gently and lovingly inside you. The first lesson: your beginning does not determine your worth. Jesus was born in a stable, in an overlooked village, in an occupied land, and he became the most influential human being who ever lived. Where you start has no power over where you can go when love is your foundation. The second lesson: walk toward the people the world walks away from. In your life, there are people who are lonely, rejected, overlooked, struggling. The easiest thing is to walk past them. The most meaningful thing, the thing that actually changes a life, is to stop, to see them, to say, "I am coming to your house today." The third lesson: live what you teach. Jesus' words were powerful because they were inseparable from his life. If you want your words to matter, make sure your life matches them. Consistency between what you say and how you live is the most powerful form of leadership there is.
The fourth lesson: forgive. Completely, even at great personal cost. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was acceptable. It is saying, "I will not carry this weight forever." It is saying, "I choose freedom over bitterness." It is the most difficult and most liberating choice a human being can make. The fifth lesson: love is the only force that grows when you give it away. Every other resource diminishes when you share it. Love multiplies. The more you give, genuinely, freely, without keeping score, the more comes back to you and through you and around you. Start with one person. Start today. Start small. But start. Thank you. Thank you so sincerely and so completely for your time, your attention, and your beautiful and open heart. You are learning English, and you are doing it with curiosity and courage and a willingness to grow, which are exactly the qualities that Jesus valued in every person he ever met. He saw potential in fishermen and tax collectors and people the world had completely given up on. He would see it in you, too. You showed up today. You listened. You opened your heart to a story that has been changing lives for 2,000 years. And something from this story, I truly believe, has settled into you. Maybe it is the reminder to walk toward someone who needs to be seen. Maybe it is the permission to let go of something you have been carrying too long. Maybe it is simply the reassurance that you, exactly as you are, in your ordinary life, in your simple beginning, are worthy of extraordinary love. Because you are. You always were. Keep going, dear learner. Keep loving. Keep growing. Keep choosing kindness, especially when it is hard. And remember, the most powerful life ever lived began in a stable, with nothing the world considered important. What you begin today with love may matter more than you will ever know. I will be here with another story whenever you are ready.